I am Chloe, 35 years old, and the woman my stepdaughter mistook for the help. My husband Desmond is a brilliant real estate mogul who was supposedly in London finalizing a massive corporate merger, leaving me completely alone at our Buckhead estate in Atlanta. At exactly 9 o'clock on a rainy Tuesday night, the front double doors flew open. Jasmine marched into the foyer with her husband Liam dragging 3 oversized suitcases across the imported marble. Before I could even ask why they were here, Jasmine shoved a crumpled piece of paper against my chest. "Dad said we are moving in," she announced, her voice echoing through the massive entryway. She pointed at the paper. "Breakfast at 8. No greasy food. Fresh sheets every week. Scrub our bathroom every night and hand wash our delicate clothes. No maids allowed. No outside help." Then she looked me up and down, taking in my silk sleep set and protective hair bonnet. "Since you are living off my dad, you might as well earn your keep." I simply smiled, folded the list, and said, "Okay." I had no idea that by 8 o'clock the next morning, I would serve them a reality check that would shatter their entire world. Before I share my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to put entitled family members in their place. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood on the south side of Atlanta, I learned early that respect is not given, it is earned. I built my career as a forensic accountant from the ground up, specializing in recovering hidden assets for high-net-worth clients. Desmond and I connected over our shared drive and mutual respect. We built a genuine partnership based on trust and transparency. But to Jasmine, I was just another gold digger trying to steal her inheritance. She was 26, raised entirely in exclusive country clubs and private schools, heavily insulated from the real world, and utterly convinced of her own superiority. Her husband Liam was a 28-year-old tech entrepreneur from a wealthy white family in Connecticut. Together they projected an image of untouchable perfection, constantly looking down their noses at anyone who had to actually work for a living. Standing in the foyer that night, the tension was thick enough to cut. Rain lashed against the tall windows, matching the sudden storm inside my home. Liam dropped his bags carelessly, leaving dark scuff marks on the pristine floor I had just polished that morning. He let out a condescending chuckle looking at my sleepwear. "About time someone put you to work, Chloe," he said, his tone dripping with that familiar subtle mockery he always used with me. "Real honest work might actually build some character. You cannot just coast on Desmond's bank account forever, you know." I did not argue. Arguing with people committed to misunderstanding you is a complete waste of energy. My mother always taught me to let fools dig their own graves before offering them a shovel. Instead, I reached down to grab the handle of Liam's supposedly high-end designer suitcase. As I lifted it, the cheap metal zipper snapped completely off in my hand, revealing a frayed interior and a faded luggage tag from a budget airline. My forensic accounting instincts flared instantly. Wealthy tech founders flying budget airlines with knockoff luggage usually meant one thing: the money was drying up rapidly. Jasmine snatched the handle away from me, glaring fiercely. "Mom always warned us Dad had a weakness for charity cases from the hood," she sneered, tossing her long hair over her shoulder. "Just carry the bags up to the East Wing guest suite, and do not scuff the walls. I need my sleep." I watched them march up the grand staircase, acting like royalty, returning to their castle. They whispered to each other, laughing at my expense. They truly thought I was a helpless trophy wife paralyzed by their authority. What they did not know was that Desmond and I had a professional history long before they ever bothered to ask what I actually did for a living. 2 years earlier, my forensic and equity team had been involved in an emergency asset recovery project connected to serious financial pressure around the family business. The details remained confidential, but the work had given me lawful visibility into obligations, trust structures, and liabilities. Jasmine and Liam clearly did not understand. I did not need to announce any of that in the foyer. Their assumptions were already doing more damage to them than any speech I could make. I carried their cheap, heavy bags up the stairs, placing them neatly inside the guest suite. "Have a good night," I said, my voice perfectly level, betraying none of the power I held over them. Jasmine simply slammed the heavy wooden door right in my face. Walking back down to the main floor, the silence of the house wrapped around me like a familiar cloak. I walked into my private home office and locked the heavy mahogany doors. I powered up my encrypted workstation and opened records I was legally authorized to review through the family asset recovery work. I started with public corporate filings, secured credit notices, trust-linked transactions, and documents preserved through authorized channels. Liam had left a paper trail so careless that I did not need to invade a private account to see how badly the image was cracking. The financial decay was far worse than a broken luggage zipper. Public filings and creditor records showed his flagship startup had produced almost no meaningful revenue for 6 months. Secured obligations where delinquent vendor balances were stacking up, and cash was moving between related entities to keep accounts alive. Most revealing was a formal enforcement notice tied to their luxury downtown penthouse and the startup obligations Liam had guaranteed. They were not moving in to protect Desmond from me. They were moving in because their financial walls were already closing. I printed the foreclosure notice, watching the crisp white paper slide out of the printer. The ink was warm to the touch. I folded it neatly, slipping it inside a silver serving folio from the dining room. Jasmine had demanded breakfast at 8 sharp. She wanted me to act like the maid. She wanted to humiliate me in my own home. So I set my alarm for 7. I was going to serve them exactly what they asked for. At exactly 8 the next morning, I walked into the formal dining room carrying a silver tray. Jasmine was already seated in one of Desmond's high-backed chairs, tapping one manicured nail against the table, as though she had been waiting on room service at a hotel. Liam sat across from her wearing a white t-shirt that cost more than most people's weekly groceries, scrolling through his phone with an expression of irritation. Neither of them said good morning. Jasmine looked at the clock on the wall and then at me. 8 sharp, she said. At least you can follow one instruction. I want avocado toast, 2 poached eggs, fruit on the side, and coffee with oat milk. Liam wants the same thing but no fruit. He is cutting sugar. She leaned back and smiled like the foreman of a plantation she had invented in her head. And after breakfast you can start on the bathroom. I set the silver tray between them. Of course, I said. Breakfast is served. Liam lifted the polished cloche with a smug little flourish. There was no toast underneath it. No eggs. No fruit. There was a neat stack of documents clipped inside a clear evidence sleeve. The first page carried the name of his startup, the secured creditor, and a bold notice of default covering equipment receivables and the personal guarantee attached to their downtown penthouse. The second page showed 6 months of missed obligations. The third showed the scheduled enforcement date if the default was not cured. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Liam's face changed first. His skin went from pale to violently red. He snatched the papers off the plate and scanned them so quickly his eyes seemed to shake. Where did you get this? He demanded. Public filings, creditor notices, and records. I am legally authorized to review in connection with Jasmine's trust, I replied. You should really read your mail. His chair shot backward and struck the floor hard enough to rattle the china cabinet. You snooping, gold-digging psychopath. You went through my business files. No, I said. I went through lawful records connected to money you have been pulling from accounts I administer. There is a difference. One can get me sued. The other is my job. Jasmine grabbed the notice from him. Foreclosure, she whispered. What does this mean, Liam? You told me the company was waiting on a Series B round. You said the penthouse refinancing was just paperwork. It is paperwork, he snapped. Temporary paperwork. She is trying to scare you because she hates us. I poured coffee into my own cup and sat at the far end of the table. If that explanation comforts you, keep it. But while you are asking questions, ask him why your social security number appears as guarantor on 2 credit facilities you never approved. The room went silent again. Jasmine looked at me slowly. What are you talking about? I slid a second page toward her. It did not show her entire number. I would never leave something that sensitive lying on a breakfast table. It showed the last 4 digits, the dates and the applications that used her identity to back credit lines routed through companies Liam controlled. One of those companies had transferred funds into an offshore account before the money moved back to cover payroll at his startup. Liam slapped his palm over the paper. Stop. You do not understand corporate finance. I smiled into my coffee. I understand it for a living. Jasmine's eyes narrowed. Dad is going to cancel every card you have when he hears this. He is in London, but he will make one call and shut you down. You are living in his house wearing jewelry he paid for, and you think you can attack my husband. Call him, I said. Ask him anything you want. She reached for her phone, but before she could unlock it, mine began ringing on the table. The caller identification flashed Aunt Valerie. I answered on speaker. Valerie's voice filled the room, clipped and superior. Chloe, I heard Jasmine and Liam are staying at the house. I am coming by this afternoon. There are standards in this family, and after what Jasmine told me, I think someone needs to inspect how you have been running Desmond's home while he is away. Jasmine's expression brightened instantly. See, she said. Aunt Valerie understands. I looked at the foreclosure notice still sitting where breakfast should have been. Wonderful, I told Valerie. Come whenever you like. I will make sure the house is ready for inspection. When I ended the call, Liam leaned across the table. You think a few documents make you powerful? He said quietly. You are still temporary here. I picked up the maid list Jasmine had given me the night before and folded it once more. Rule 4 was written in purple ink: get rid of all trash before dinner. I looked at Jasmine, then at the pile of expensive clothing boxes visible through the open guest room doorway upstairs. Jasmine was not used to receiving information she could not dismiss with a call to her father. She carried the notice to the window and read the secured creditor's name twice. Then she looked at Liam as if waiting for him to translate the document back into the life she preferred. He started pacing. The lender is overreacting, he said. Startups miss timing milestones. That is normal. The company is valuable. We have intellectual property investors' receivables. The notice says the cure period expired, I replied. He glared at me. Jasmine asked what cure period meant. Liam ignored her. So I answered. It means the lender gave notice of default and time to fix it. According to the filing, the missed obligations were not cured. The penthouse guarantee was included in the collateral package. That is why the enforcement notice exists. Jasmine's eyes widened. Our penthouse is fine, Liam snapped. Then show her the current statement. He did not. That silence mattered. Jasmine pulled out her phone and called Desmond in London. It rang until voicemail. She called again. No answer. See, she said to me, Dad is busy. When he calls back, this ends. Maybe. She hated that word. Liam began collecting the papers as though possession of them would reduce their meaning. I let him. I had copies. More importantly, the actual records existed outside my printer. Jasmine stared at the line containing the last 4 digits of her social security number. I never approved this lender. Then ask for the application package. Why would Liam need my number if the company was doing well? That was the question she had been avoiding. Liam turned on me. This is why nobody trusts forensic people. You turn every financing structure into a conspiracy. No. I turn unexplained structures into questions. Answers determine what happens next. He laughed without humor. You think because you married an older, wealthy man and learned a few accounting terms you can interrogate founders. My coffee cup paused halfway to my mouth. Jasmine smiled, slightly relieved that the conversation had returned to insulting me instead of examining him. I placed the cup down. I did not marry Desmond to learn accounting. What does that mean? It means you know less about me than you think. Before either of them could push further, Aunt Valerie's call arrived. Her timing was almost theatrical. She had heard a version of the night's conflict from Jasmine and immediately appointed herself guardian of family order. On speaker, she asked whether the silver had been polished, whether the guest wing had been opened correctly, and whether I understood that Jasmine's comfort should come before personal sensitivities. I listened without interrupting. Then she announced the inspection. After the call, Jasmine visibly relaxed. Valerie represented the family hierarchy. She trusted age, status, tradition, money. If Valerie said I was beneath them, Jasmine considered the matter settled. Liam gathered the foreclosure papers and shoved them into his laptop bag. Destroying those will not help, I said. I am taking my documents. They are public copies. His hand stopped. I smiled. Breakfast at 8 had done exactly what I wanted. I had not solved the problem for Jasmine. I had made it impossible for her to pretend there was no problem at all. Before clearing the table, I photographed the documents exactly where they sat. Not for social media. For my case file. Liam's foreclosure notice belonged to a pattern, and patterns become useful only when the dates line up. Jasmine saw me take the photograph. Are you building a file on us? I am preserving records. That sounds creepy. It sounds responsible when money is involved. She rolled her eyes, but she did not stop me. The difference between us was becoming visible already. She thought documentation was aggression, because she had spent most of her life protected by conversations nobody wrote down. I knew documentation was often the only thing standing between truth and the loudest person in the room. Do not worry, I said. I am planning to follow every rule. Aunt Valerie arrived just after 2, wearing cream wool oversized sunglasses, and the expression of a woman disappointed that the world had not rolled out a carpet before she stepped from her car. She did not hug me. She did not ask where Desmond was or whether I had slept. She walked into the foyer, looked around as if she were appraising a property, and dragged one finger across a console table to check for dust. Acceptable, she said. Jasmine came down the stairs in a robe and immediately attached herself to Valerie's side. Thank God you are here. Chloe has been impossible. She served legal papers for breakfast. She is obsessed with humiliating us. Valerie removed her sunglasses and looked me up and down. Desmond has always had a soft spot for strong personalities, she said. But there is a difference between confidence and forgetting your position. My position, I repeated. As his wife, she said. This family has expectations. Old Atlanta families do not survive because every new person decides the rules are beneath her. Liam appeared behind them and smiled. Finally, an adult. I let the insult land without reaction. People like Liam always mistook composure for surrender. It saved me time. Jasmine clapped her hands and pointed toward a rolling garment rack that had appeared at the top of the stairs. Since Aunt Valerie is here, we might as well deal with my dresses. I have the club dinner tonight. Those silks need to be hand-washed. No machine. No outside cleaner. That was on the list. Valerie nodded as though a committee had voted. If you are going to live in a house built by this family, contributing is not unreasonable. I walked to the rack. Jasmine had hung 12 silk dresses there, each protected in tissue paper and plastic. A handwritten tag dangled from the side. Clean, sort, remove what I don't need. She had added that final instruction sometime that morning, probably assuming I would act as a free stylist too. Which ones do you not need? I asked. Jasmine waved one hand carelessly. Anything in the left section. I wore those last season. Get them out of my sight. The rest are for tonight. I glanced at the Maid list. Rule 4. Get rid of all trash before dinner. Perfect, I said. I separated the left side garments exactly as she had instructed, placed them into heavy-duty donation bags, and carried them toward the front door. The courier from a local women's shelter had already arrived for the household donation pickup I scheduled every December. I had used that shelter for years because they ran a professional clothing program for women returning to work after crisis or displacement. Valerie frowned. What are you doing following instructions? Jasmine looked up from her phone when the courier began loading the garment bags onto the van. Wait, what is in those, the things you told me to get out of your sight? Her face changed. She sprinted toward the door in bare feet. My silk dresses. The left section, I said. The ones you said you did not need. I need them for resale, she screamed. Those are worth thousands. You said to remove them. You also told me to get rid of all trash. I chose an organization where they will be useful instead of a landfill. The van doors closed. The courier pulled away before Jasmine could decide whether screaming in the driveway would help. She whirled toward me. Get them back! I handed her the donation receipt. The shelter's policy and telephone number were printed at the bottom. You authorize the disposal. If the items have not been distributed, you can ask whether they can be returned. I am not chasing a charity van through Atlanta because you cannot give clear instructions. Valerie's mouth fell open. That was deliberate. No, I said. Deliberate would have been ignoring the written instructions. I followed them. Liam grabbed Jasmine by the arm and pulled her close. His face had gone rigid. Stop making scenes, he muttered, though loud enough for me to hear. We will deal with her tonight. Jasmine tried to pull away. I need something for the club. Then wear one of the dresses on the right side, I said. Liam's grip tightened slightly. I watched Jasmine wince. It was small, almost invisible, but I noticed. Forensic accounting teaches you to pay attention to pressure points. Numbers move because people move them. Fear has a pattern too. Valerie stepped between us and lifted her chin. Chloe, you are enjoying this far too much. I am enjoying clarity, I answered. She looked toward the stairs. Desmond should never have given you this much freedom in his home. I smiled. That sentence is going to become very important later. For the rest of the afternoon, Valerie and Jasmine tried to manufacture new tasks. Move the flowers, refold the guest towels, change the table setting. I completed nothing they had no right to demand and argued about none of it. I simply documented every text, every instruction, every insult. When Liam whispered to Jasmine near the pantry, I caught enough of it to understand the plan. Change the lock while she is downstairs, he said. Let her see how temporary she is. I carried a stack of clean towels toward the laundry room and pretended not to hear. An hour later I climbed the stairs and found the master suite door flashing red. Jasmine stood beside it with Valerie. Liam was holding a screwdriver and smiling. Problem, he asked. My code no longer works. Jasmine crossed her arms. Dad said we are moving in. We need privacy. You can sleep in the guest wing. Staff quarters would be more appropriate, but I am trying to be nice. Valerie laughed softly. I looked at the smart lock, then at Liam. You changed access to my bedroom. Our bedroom now, Jasmine said. I nodded once. Understood. Their smiles widened because they thought silence meant defeat. I turned around and walked toward the guest wing, carrying nothing but my phone. Behind me, Valerie said, See? That was not so difficult. Valerie's inspection became less about housekeeping and more about reminding me of the rank she believed everyone occupied. She inspected flowers, criticized the placement of guest towels, and asked why I had chosen modern African art for one corridor when the family had perfectly good European pieces in storage. I answered each question calmly. Then she began talking about legacy. Your generation confuses individual achievement with belonging, she said. Families like ours survived because we respected structure. Desmond inherited standards. Jasmine inherited standards. You cannot walk in and redesign everything because you had a career before marriage. A career before marriage. The phrase was almost funny. I asked what she believed I did. Consulting of some kind. Jasmine laughed. Numbers. Valerie waved one hand. Useful, I am sure, but not the same as building generational wealth. I looked at her. The bridge loan for your boutique was generational wealth. Her face tightened. That is private. Exactly. The point was not to humiliate her yet. It was to remind her that the family mythology depended on everybody agreeing not to look closely at the balance sheet. When Jasmine produced the silk dresses, Valerie transformed the demand into a moral lesson. Hand-washing delicate fabric teaches care, she said. People who grow up without staff learn discipline through these tasks. I almost asked which tasks she personally completed. Instead, I examined the garment tags. Several pieces were still unworn. Others carried boutique consignment labels. Jasmine had clearly been cycling clothes through resale to maintain the appearance of constant newness. That detail matched the broader pressure I was already seeing in Liam's household finances. The donation instruction on the rack mattered. I photographed it before touching anything. Clean, sort, remove what I don't need. I asked Jasmine twice which items fell into the final category. The entire left side, she said both times. I sent her a text confirming left side garments authorized for removal from household. She replied with a thumbs up emoji and yes, get rid of them. That written confirmation was the only reason I proceeded. I was not going to commit theft for the sake of a clever comeback. The shelter courier arrived during Valerie's lecture about standards. I carried the authorized donation bags to the front door and obtained a receipt identifying the number of garments, not exaggerated values. When Jasmine realized what had happened, her outrage was immediate. because consequences always felt unfair to her when they followed her own instructions. "You knew what I meant," she screamed. "I knew what you wrote and confirmed. I meant get them out of the room, not give them away. Then next time, use words that say that." Valerie called me manipulative. I handed Jasmine the shelter number. "You can call now. If distribution has not occurred, ask whether the donation can be reversed. I will not misrepresent your authorization to retrieve them." Jasmine stared at the receipt. For once, the paper protected me because I had documented the instruction. Liam watched that exchange closely. He was beginning to understand something Jasmine had not. I kept records. People who live by verbal pressure hate records, because records survive mood changes. Later, when I heard Liam whisper about changing the locks, I did not confront him. I took a screenshot of the current access configuration and saved the timestamp. If he wanted to create another record, I was willing to let him. The shelter called 15 minutes later. The garments had not yet been distributed, and Jasmine could request reversal of the donation if she came in personally with identification and signed responsibility for the pickup. I gave her the information. She stared at me. "You mean I can get them back?" "Yes." "Then why did you act like they were gone forever?" "I did not." "You did." That answer embarrassed her more than the donation itself. She had escalated into screaming before asking the most basic question. She went to retrieve the dresses. For the rest of the day, the donation receipt stayed on the foyer table, like a quiet warning about careless orders. No, I thought. It really was not. The guest wing had a king bed, a private bath, and windows overlooking the winter garden. I slept better there than Jasmine and Liam slept in the master suite. Before I turned off the light, I opened the estate management application on my iPad. Desmond and I had designed the system with separate environmental zones, so empty rooms would not waste energy. The master suite was one of those zones. So was its private Wi-Fi node. I did not cut power. I did not do anything dangerous. I simply removed the guest override Liam had created, returned the suite to vacant property settings, and suspended the network access tied to the unauthorized lock modification. The thermostat settled several degrees warmer than the rest of the house. The suite Wi-Fi disconnected. Then I set the iPad on the nightstand and went to sleep. At 6:20 the next morning, somebody began pounding on my door. Chloe Jasmine yelled, "Open this door." I rolled over, checked the time, and waited another 10 seconds before answering. Jasmine stood in the hallway with damp hair stuck to her forehead. Liam was behind her wearing yesterday's t-shirt, holding his laptop in one hand and his phone in the other. "The air conditioner is broken," Jasmine snapped. "It is December. The room is boiling. The suite is on vacant settings," I said. "You changed the access permissions." The system read the room as unauthorized occupancy. Liam shoved his phone toward me. "And the Wi-Fi, same principle. Turn it back on." "Why?" I asked. "I thought I was temporary." Valerie's door opened farther down the hall. She stepped out wrapped in a robe and looked irritated by the noise. "This house is becoming a circus." Jasmine pointed at me. "She disabled our internet." Valerie fixed me with a cold stare. "Petty." I leaned against the doorframe. "You called this Desmond's house yesterday." Liam altered a secured access system without authorization. The management platform did exactly what it was designed to do. Valerie scoffed. "Black excellence means building something your children can inherit, not using technology to torment them." I studied her for a moment. She loved that phrase, black excellence. She used it like a private club password, as though excellence stopped being black the second it came from a woman she considered socially inconvenient. "Interesting," I said. "Since we are discussing generational wealth, how is the boutique?" Her face tightened. Jasmine looked between us. "What boutique?" Valerie's voice sharpened. "That is none of your concern." "Last quarter you asked Desmond for a high-interest bridge loan to keep it open," I said. "You signed a demand note after 2 banks declined you." I reviewed the collateral schedule because my firm holds the note. Color drained from her face. Liam stopped pretending to be annoyed with the Wi-Fi and looked directly at me. Valerie lowered her voice. "Desmond handled that privately." "He did. I handled the underwriting." Jasmine blinked. "Why would you handle Dad's loans?" I smiled. Because some of the assumptions you have about this family are wrong. Valerie recovered first. She drew herself up, performing dignity. Money moves around in every established family. That does not change your place in this home. No, I said. Documents do. She stared at me hard, but she did not ask what I meant. I restored normal temperature and Wi-Fi to the suite after Liam removed his unauthorized lock configuration and restored my access code. I made him do it in front of me. He complained the entire time, muttering about controlling women in security theater. I said nothing. By breakfast, he was glued to his laptop, trying to rescue his startup. Several emails arrived while he refreshed his inbox. He cursed under his breath, closed one window, then opened another. Jasmine demanded to know why he was not taking her to the club spa. He told her he had investor meetings. That afternoon, the true purpose of his sudden politeness appeared. He found me in the kitchen while I was reviewing a recovery memo. "We are going to the club at 5, he said. Jasmine has an event. I have a funding conversation. You are coming." I looked up. Why? Because I need someone to carry materials and keep Jasmine organized. He smiled. "Consider it one of your household duties." I laughed once. "No." His expression changed. "Then I will tell Desmond you have been emotionally abusive to his daughter. I will tell him you donated her property, locked her out of the internet, and created an unsafe environment. You think he is going to choose you over his child?" How was threatening me with a story I already knew was false. What interested me was not the threat. It was the investor meeting. "Who are you pitching? None of your business." Jasmine walked in behind him, already dressed for the evening. "Kingston," she said. "He is one of the biggest venture capital names in Atlanta. If Liam closes this round, everything goes back to normal." Liam glared at her for revealing it. Kingston. I knew the name. More importantly, I knew his diligence standards. If Liam planned to put stolen code in front of him, the evening could become useful. I closed my laptop. "Fine," I said. "I will come." Jasmine smirked. "I knew you would listen eventually. Not even close, I thought." At 5:30, I sat in the back of their car holding a presentation case Liam had shoved into my hands. He spent the entire drive rehearsing his pitch, talking about proprietary architecture, exclusive algorithms, and a technology stack his company had supposedly built from scratch. Each claim matched a line in the forensic file I had been building for Desmond's asset recovery work. The lock change became a miniature version of the entire family dynamic. Liam assumed access equaled ownership. Jasmine assumed blood equaled authority. Valerie assumed tradition equaled law. I opened the property management log and saw the exact time the master suite permissions were altered. Liam had used a guest administrator code Jasmine obtained under the limited power of attorney. The system recorded the change, the device used, and the location. I saved all of it. When I restored the environmental settings the next morning, I did so inside the system's owner controls. The master suite did not become dangerous. It became inconvenient, warmer, offline, less comfortable than the entitlement they had dragged into it. Liam called the internet provider and tried to restore service directly. The provider asked for the account holder. He gave Desmond's name. The security question failed. He cursed and hung up. Jasmine then called a technician she knew from another property. The technician arrived, checked the control panel, and politely explained that the network was integrated into a managed estate system. He would need owner authorization. Owner. The word visibly irritated her. Valerie told him Desmond owned the house. The technician asked for written authority. I nearly smiled. After he left, Valerie accused me of arranging the humiliation. I did not arrange the company's authentication rules. You enjoy saying no. I enjoy hearing people read contracts before they act. That was when the conversation about her boutique loan became unavoidable. Valerie tried to dismiss the missed covenant as a paperwork issue. I described the requirement exactly: quarterly financial statements, current insurance, and a minimum liquidity threshold. She had delivered the statements late twice. Her liquidity had fallen below the threshold once. My firm had issued a waiver. "You know all of that?" Jasmine asked. I reviewed the credit because Desmond asked my firm to help when Valerie needed the bridge. Why would Dad ask you? Because I do this professionally. Liam looked at me across the breakfast island. What exactly is your firm? Asset recovery, forensic accounting, distressed credit analysis, equity rescue when appropriate. Valerie laughed, but not convincingly. You make it sound grand, I make it sound accurate. The room shifted slightly. Until then, they had imagined my work as a hobby attached to Desmond's name. Now they had a harder time fitting the evidence into that story. That afternoon, Liam became unusually polite. He asked whether I wanted anything from the club. He asked whether I knew Kingston personally. He asked whether my firm invested in technology. I gave him almost nothing. Why? Because I could see the purpose. He did not want me at the country club as an assistant. He wanted to determine whether I was a threat to his funding. When he finally ordered me to accompany them, the threat about telling Desmond I had been abusive confirmed it. I could have refused. I had every right. Instead, I agreed because the investor meeting offered something better than another argument in the hallway. It offered a room full of people Liam wanted to impress. People like Liam reveal themselves most clearly when they think the audience matters more than the truth. That evening before the country club, I reviewed the access log with the estate's security contractor. I asked one question: had any of the lock changes compromised emergency egress number good? Had Liam obtained owner-level credentials? Num. The system rejected the attempt. Better. I saved the technical report. This was how I handled conflict. Not by assuming my opponent was wrong because I disliked him. By verifying what actually happened. The report also showed Liam had tried 3 times to extend his guest permissions beyond the master suite. He was not just locking me out. He was testing how much control he could seize. That made the investor meeting even more important. By the time we reached the country club, I knew exactly what I wanted Kingston to see. The country club dining room was designed to make money feel permanent. Dark walnut walls, white linen oil paintings, and the soft murmur of people who believed discretion was another form of currency. Liam straightened the cuffs of his jacket as we crossed the threshold. Jasmine looped her arm through his and instantly became the polished heiress she thought everyone expected. I followed 3 steps behind, carrying the presentation case he had shoved into my hands. Do not speak unless I ask you a question, Liam said over his shoulder. If anyone needs something, make yourself useful. Jasmine glanced back at me with a satisfied smile. Think of it as practice. I almost admired the consistency of their arrogance. Kingston was already seated at a round table near the windows. He was a prominent African-American venture capitalist, with a reputation for asking founders questions they could not answer with charm. He had backed logistics software, medical platforms, consumer apps, and several founders who had gone from HBCU dorm rooms to national markets. Liam had been talking about this meeting for months. Kingston stood when we approached. He greeted Jasmine politely. He shook Liam's hand without enthusiasm. Then his eyes moved to me. Chloe, he said with a brief nod. Liam froze for half a second. You two know each other professionally, Kingston replied. I smiled. Atlanta is smaller than people think. Liam recovered quickly and laughed as though the moment meant nothing. Chloe helps around the house while Desmond is abroad. She likes feeling involved. Kingston looked at him for a beat too long. I sat at the far side of the table only after Jasmine placed her coat across my chair and told me to hang it. I did. Not because she had authority over me, but because I wanted to see exactly how far Liam would perform when he believed I had no status in the room. He launched into his pitch. He called his app revolutionary infrastructure. He described proprietary predictive architecture, exclusive machine learning logic, and a technology stack he said his company had built from scratch over 3 years. He spoke smoothly about scaling marginalized consumer markets, while somehow managing to sound contemptuous of the people he claimed to understand. Kingston asked who wrote the original core. Our engineering team. Liam answered instantly. His left thumb began rubbing the edge of the presentation folder. I had already noticed that habit. He did it when an answer required more confidence than truth. Kingston asked for details about intellectual property assignments, standard employment agreements, developer retention strong, pending claims none. Each answer contradicted a document in the forensic file I had reviewed. Jasmine watched her husband with glowing pride. Every time he used a complicated term, she looked around the room to see who noticed. She had no idea the startup was months behind on secured obligations. She had no idea the penthouse was already in default. She had no idea that his most valuable software asset had a chain of ownership problem large enough to kill the entire investment. Liam clicked to a slide showing user growth. Sparkling water, he said without looking at me. I remained seated. He turned. Chloe. Water. Several people at the neighboring table glanced over. Jasmine whispered, "Just get it." Kingston said nothing. I stood slowly. Of course. At the bar, I ordered a bottle of sparkling mineral water, a glass, and ice. I returned while Liam was explaining how his product would dominate a market he had not yet managed to monetize. I placed the bottle beside him. "Pour it," he said. I poured. His glass was nearly full when he reached across the table to point at a chart. His elbow struck my wrist. The glass tipped. Ice water spilled directly over the presentation folder. The room gasped. Liam shot to his feet. "What is wrong with you?" I grabbed napkins immediately. "I am sorry. You moved. You did that on purpose." Jasmine's chair scraped back. "Chloe." I lifted the wet folder. Ink was running across several pages. Liam tried blotting his printed charts with his sleeve, making the mess worse. "Use my tablet," I said. "Your deck is already accessible through the guest presentation link." I placed my tablet on the dry side of the table. Liam glared at me, then grabbed it. Finally, something useful. The screen was dark. I watched his thumb hit the side button. My heart rate did not change. His did, because the device did not wake to his presentation. Before Kingston arrived, Liam rehearsed one more instruction in the club corridor. "If anyone asks who you are, say family assistant." I stopped walking. Jasmine looked back. "What, I am not saying that." Liam smiled. "Fine. Do not say anything." That was the compromise his ego could tolerate. Inside, the club staff recognized Desmond's name, and several members nodded to Valerie's niece as Jasmine crossed the room. Nobody recognized Liam's startup. He compensated by speaking louder. At the table, he described market size with numbers that did not match the revenue statements in the foreclosure file. Kingston asked about customer acquisition cost. Liam gave a polished answer. Kingston asked about churn. Another polished answer. Then Kingston asked why the latest audited financial statements were unavailable. Liam blamed the accountant. That detail interested me. A founder who blamed every professional around him eventually blamed the numbers themselves. Kingston asked about the HBCU developer by name. Liam's expression tightened for less than a second. "Former contractor," he said. I noticed Jasmine look at him. She had never heard the name. Kingston asked whether the company owned all code created under that relationship. Absolutely. The lie arrived quickly. My hand tightened around the handle of the water pitcher. The spill itself was genuinely accidental in mechanics. Liam moved into my arm. But I had already decided that if his presentation failed, my tablet would become the backup device. I had prepared the audit before leaving the estate. That was strategic, not the water. When the ice hit his folder, the social humiliation was immediate because he had spent the entire evening making me visible only as help. Several club members saw him snap at me. One older gentleman frowned when Liam called me incompetent. Jasmine whispered that I should apologize more sincerely. I did. I apologized for the spill, not for the truth waiting on the tablet. As Liam reached for the device, Kingston asked me quietly, "You are comfortable sharing your hardware?" I met his eyes. Completely. He understood there was something else on it. Liam did not. That difference explained why one man had built a respected investment career and the other was hiding foreclosure papers in a laptop bag. When the screen came on, Liam's first instinct was not confusion. It was recognition. He knew exactly what the repository comparison meant. That was the moment I became certain he had not innocently inherited disputed code through a careless employee. He had known there was a problem, and he had raised money anyway. Kingston also noticed the way Liam spoke to staff. When a server asked whether he wanted still or sparkling water, Liam answered without looking at her. Sparkling. Obviously. Kingston thanked the server when she returned. The contrast was small. I watched him watch Liam. Serious investors do not only evaluate projections, they evaluate how a founder behaves when he thinks somebody in the room cannot help him. Liam had spent the entire evening broadcasting exactly what kind of man he was. The stolen code file would be the decisive problem. His character had already weakened the case before my tablet ever lit up. It woke to the first page of a forensic IP audit. The report on my tablet was locked in read-only mode. Liam could swipe through it, but he could not close it without my access code. At the top of the first page was a repository comparison. On the left, source files from Liam's supposedly proprietary application. On the right, earlier files created by a young developer at an HBCU who had worked briefly under a prototype agreement. The hashes matched. Function names matched. Internal comments matched. Even several unusual spelling errors matched. Liam's face lost color. "What is this?" Kingston asked. "A due diligence issue," I said. Liam tried to shove the tablet back toward me. "This is private material." "The records were assembled from lawful sources connected to an asset recovery review," I replied. "Contract files preserve development records, payment history, public corporate filings, and information provided through parties authorized to cooperate with the review. Nobody hacked your company." Kingston held out his hand. Liam did not give him the tablet. Kingston's voice cooled. "If you want me to invest, I suggest you let me see the diligence concern." For the first time that night, Liam obeyed someone without pretending it was his idea. Kingston read silently. Jasmine leaned over his shoulder and went pale as the report unfolded. The young developer had been paid a small fixed amount to build a prototype. The contract did not assign all future ownership to Liam's company. Weeks later, the relationship ended. Months after that, nearly identical source code appeared in Liam's product without a new license acquisition agreement or assignment. There was also correspondence. Liam's team had been warned twice that ownership needed to be resolved before fundraising. He had ignored both warnings. "This is being taken out of context," Liam said. Kingston looked up. "Did you disclose this in my diligence questionnaire?" "It is not material." "That was not my question." The developer was basically an intern. The contract says independent developer. Same thing. "No," Kingston said. "It is not." Jasmine whispered. "Liam, you told me your engineers built everything in-house. They finished it." "Using code that appears to have existed before they touched it," I said. He pointed at me. "You have been waiting to do this." I had been waiting for records to be complete. Kingston continued reading. His jaw tightened further when he reached the payment trail showing Liam's startup transferring trust-backed funds into payroll shortly after the code dispute intensified. Finally, he closed the tablet cover. "We are done." Liam laughed nervously. "Done with what? This meeting, the funding discussion, all of it. You cannot walk away because of an accusation from a bitter family member." Kingston stood and buttoned his jacket. "I am walking away because you made representations about intellectual property that the records do not support. If the ownership is clean, resolve it and come back with documentation. Until then, there is no term sheet." Liam moved around the table. "Kingston, wait. We can structure indemnities. We can escrow. I can explain the developer. You should explain it to counsel." Kingston gave me a short nod, then walked away. The surrounding tables had gone quiet. People who had been pretending not to listen suddenly became deeply interested in their glasses. Liam remained standing with both hands on the table, breathing through his nose. Jasmine looked humiliated, not by what he had done but by the fact that other people had seen it. "You destroyed his meeting," she said to me. "I showed an investor a material risk your husband concealed. You humiliated us." Truth usually feels humiliating when someone has built an image that cannot survive it. Liam snapped the tablet case shut and pushed it toward me hard enough that it slid across the table. "You think this makes you important? No. You are Desmond's wife, that is all." I picked up the tablet. Interesting theory. We left the club without dessert. In the corridor, Jasmine grabbed my forearm. "We are done with you," she hissed. "I have Dad's power of attorney. He signed it before London. I can make decisions for him while he is away. The document does not say what you think it says." Her eyes widened. "You read it, I read everything that affects assets I am responsible for." Liam stepped close, his voice low and venomous. "Tonight we change every code. You will pack whatever Desmond bought you and leave. If you make trouble, Jasmine will use the power of attorney to remove you legally." Jasmine nodded. 10 minutes. That is what you get." I looked from one to the other. They had just lost a major funding opportunity. They were deeply in debt. They believed the solution was to evict the forensic accountant who understood every document beneath their feet. "Fine," I said. Jasmine blinked. "Fine, let us go home." They smiled because they thought I had surrendered. Kingston did not rush the decision. That made Liam's collapse worse. He asked for the original prototype date. I showed it. He asked for the payment invoice. I showed it. He asked whether the developer had signed an assignment transferring all derivative rights. The file contained no such assignment. Liam tried to interrupt. Kingston raised one finger. "Let her finish." The words silenced him. I explained that the forensic comparison did not decide legal ownership by itself. That question belonged to counsel and, if necessary, a court. What it proved was that Liam had represented the software as cleanly proprietary, despite unresolved documentation and prior warnings. That was enough to make the investment risk unacceptable. I was careful with that distinction. A forensic accountant's credibility depends on knowing where evidence ends and legal conclusions begin. Jasmine asked why I cared. Because disputed intellectual property affects valuation. Because Liam used trust-backed money to keep the company operating while seeking investment. Because the trust has exposure. She looked at him. "You used my money for this." He snapped that all married couples support each other. Kingston stood. That sentence told him more than the pitch deck. Liam followed him toward the exit, trying to salvage the meeting. He offered a smaller round. He offered a convertible note. He offered personal guarantees. Kingston did not stop. By the time Liam returned, the humiliation had turned into rage. He leaned across the table toward me. "You came here to destroy me." "No. I came because you ordered me to carry your materials." Jasmine's face flushed. "Do not be cute. I am not." At the elevator, 2 club members who knew Desmond gave me polite nods and ignored Liam. That wounded him more than Kingston's rejection. His identity depended on being seen as the powerful one standing beside a woman he considered beneath him. Now the room had seen the opposite. In the car, he began talking about the power of attorney before we even left the parking lot. He said Jasmine could remove me. He said they would cancel my access. He said Desmond would thank them when he returned. I listened. The more he threatened property rights, the more certain I became he had never examined the ownership structure of the estate. That arrogance was astonishing. He was a man trying to build a technology company while assuming every system around him operated according to the story he preferred. The deed was going to be an unpleasant software update. Jasmine asked Kingston whether a smaller investment could still happen if Liam fixed the paperwork. Kingston answered her directly. "If ownership is resolved, financial statements are accurate, and management demonstrates credibility, any future conversation would begin from scratch." Liam interrupted. "We already have credibility." Kingston looked at him. "That is not a claim you get to make about yourself." Then he left. I remembered that sentence. For years, Jasmine and Liam had treated status as self-certifying. If they said they were successful, everyone was supposed to agree. Kingston required proof. So did I. That was why Liam hated both of us. I followed them to the car because I wanted to be there when they discovered what their paperwork could not do. The ride back to Buckhead was tense enough to make the windows feel too small. Liam spent most of it making calls. He blamed Kingston. He blamed the developer. He blamed market conditions. He blamed me. In every version, he was the founder betrayed by irrational people at the exact moment greatness was about to arrive. Jasmine stared out the passenger window. Was the code his, she asked finally. Liam ended his call. "Do not start." I asked you a question. You are asking because Chloe poisoned you. That was the first time Jasmine looked uncertain instead of angry. We reached the estate a little after 10. Rain hammered the stone walkway. Liam rushed ahead and used the temporary guest code. By the time I entered, he had positioned himself in front of the main doors like a security guard in someone else's house. Jasmine walked to the foyer table and slapped a document onto the marble. Power of attorney, she said. Dad signed it before he left for London. You have 10 minutes to pack. I looked down at the paper. It was a limited power of attorney authorizing Jasmine to handle specific administrative and emergency matters if Desmond became unavailable during international travel. She had highlighted the phrase, financial affairs, in yellow marker, and apparently decided those two words turned her into a property owner. That document does not authorize you to evict anyone, I said. It authorizes me to act for Dad. On specified matters. I am his daughter. That is a relationship, not a legal clause. Liam moved closer. Pack. Valerie stood near the staircase. Jasmine had called her from the car, and she had returned to witness what she expected would be my humiliation. Do not make this uglier than it needs to be, Valerie said. You have enjoyed an extraordinary lifestyle. Leave with some dignity. I set my handbag on the console. No. Jasmine lifted her phone. I will call the police. You can. Liam walked towards the security panel. Then I will remove your access myself. Before he touched it, I opened the estate application on my phone and pressed Secure Property. The foyer lights dimmed into night security mode. The main exterior doors locked. The guest wing storage room, where Jasmine and Liam had pushed their oversized cases after taking over the master suite, secured automatically. The luggage itself did not magically lock. The room containing it did. Several interior smart lock permissions reverted to owner-level access. Liam spun toward me. What did you do? Protected the house from unauthorized security changes. Turn it off, in a moment. Jasmine's phone flashlight came on. She held the power of attorney in its beam. This is illegal. Then call the police. Her thumb hovered over the screen. I walked to the console and picked up a thick manila folder I had placed there before we left for the club. I slid it across the dark marble. A power of attorney only works against an asset your father actually owns, Jasmine. The sentence landed harder than I expected. She stopped moving. What does that mean, Reed? Liam snatched the folder first. He tore it open and shined his phone over the top page. For several seconds, the only sound in the foyer was rain against the windows. Valerie stepped closer. Liam turned the page. Then another. Jasmine grabbed his sleeve. What is it? He did not answer. I watched him reach the recorded deed. His jaw tightened. That cannot be real. Jasmine stared at him. What cannot be real? Liam finally looked up at me. You forged this. No. He held the deed copy under the phone light. The grantee was a holding company. My holding company. Valerie shook her head. Desmond owns this estate. He lives here. Same thing. Not legally. Jasmine snatched the paper and scanned it. The name meant nothing to her, but Liam understood enough corporate structure to recognize what he was seeing. He looked at me more carefully than he had at any point since arriving. Who owns the holding company? I do. Jasmine laughed once, but it came out thin. No. I nodded toward the next page. Keep reading. The lights remained low. The house was silent. Jasmine actually dialed emergency services. She entered the first two numbers, then stopped. What would she say? That the legal occupant of the house refused to obey a limited power of attorney, that the owner-level security system prevented guests from altering access, that her stepmother declined to pack on command. Liam saw the hesitation and grabbed her phone. Give me that. He did not complete the call either. He understood enough law to recognize uncertainty. Instead, he threatened civil court. I told him he was free to speak with counsel. Valerie called that insolence. I called it procedure. In the dim foyer, Jasmine's flashlight moved over the power of attorney. I asked her to read the exact sentence she believed granted eviction authority. She skipped to the highlighted phrase, read the entire paragraph. Her jaw tightened. Liam told her not to bother. That was revealing too. People who rely on documents they have not read become angry when someone asks them to read aloud. She finally did. The authority covered specified financial administration for Desmond during international travel, subject to existing agreements and ownership rights. Existing agreements. Ownership rights. The language did not help her. Liam changed tactics. Even if the document is limited, Desmond owns the property and Jasmine is acting for him. That was when I slid the folder across the marble. I had prepared it before the club because their lock stunt made clear they believed control of the house was their strongest weapon. The security lockdown was not designed to frighten them. It preserved the environment while the dispute unfolded. No one could run upstairs, grab a document, remove property, or alter another access setting while tempers were high. I kept an exterior exit available through the security application and could release the front door instantly. That mattered. I was protecting assets, not trapping people. Valerie did not care about the distinction. She said I was behaving like a prison warden. I told her the front door would unlock for anyone who wanted to leave. Liam did not leave. He wanted the house more than he wanted freedom from the argument. When he opened the manila folder, I watched his expression shift through 3 stages: dismissal, confusion, fear. The county recording stamp killed the first. The holding company name killed the second. The capitalization table behind the deed killed the third. He knew enough to understand the folder was not theater. And once he understood, Jasmine began to understand too. The limited power of attorney itself became part of the lesson. Jasmine had never seen the execution page. She only had the PDF. Liam told her, gave full control. When she reached the signature block, she found Desmond's initials beside a line restricting authority over separately titled property and prohibiting self-dealing. Her expression changed. Liam tried to take the document away. I stopped him with one sentence. "Let her read the paper you plan to use against me." Jasmine held on. She read the restriction twice. Then she looked at Liam. "You said this let me control the house. He said it let you act for your father. That is not what this says." He accused the lawyers of overcomplicating it. I almost laughed. For a tech founder, begging sophisticated investors for money. Liam had a remarkable dislike of precise documents. That moment planted another crack between them before the deed ever appeared. And for the first time they were not ordering me to do anything. Liam read the deed again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something kinder. They did not. The holding company listed as owner of the Buckhead estate was one of mine. The county recording information appeared at the top. The insurance rider was attached behind it. So was the restructuring summary, explaining how title transferred during the rescue 2 years earlier. Jasmine looked up. "Dad would never give you this house. He did not give it to me." "Then how?" I leaned against the console years earlier. Jasmine looked up. "Dad would never give you this house. He did not give it to me." "Then how?" I leaned against the console. 2 years ago, Desmond's real estate company was caught inside a liquidity crisis. Several projects were healthy, but the financing structure around them was not. Assets tied to your trust had been pledged into a crypto deal Liam convinced you was nearly risk-free. When that collapsed, lenders called guarantees. The Buckhead estate had been used as collateral in a broader package. Jasmine looked at Liam. "He told me that was handled." "It was. By me." Valerie's face changed slightly. I continued. "My equity firm acquired the distressed position, funded a standstill, and negotiated a restructuring. Part of that restructuring transferred title of this estate to my holding company in exchange for the capital required to prevent a forced sale. Desmond kept contractual occupancy rights. We both had independent counsel. The deed was recorded." Jasmine shook her head. "Dad is a multimillionaire." "Yes. So why would he need you?" "Because wealthy people can still be over-leveraged." Liam folded the deed. "You are saying you are the bank. In practical terms, I supplied the capital and now own the asset." Valerie scoffed. "Desmond would never put his family home under the control of a woman he barely knew. I had known him professionally before we married." That silenced her. Jasmine stepped closer. "You were involved before Dad married you for years." Why did nobody tell me? Because the rescue involved confidential financing, and because you had already made it clear you judged me according to what you thought I wanted from him. Her eyes flickered. You let me believe you lived off him. I did not owe you a financial statement to earn basic respect. Liam pointed at the deed. Even if this is real, Jasmine has authority for Desmond. She can terminate his occupancy. No, she cannot. The occupancy agreement is not hers to terminate, and the power of attorney you are waiving does not reach an asset Desmond does not own. Jasmine's face reddened. I am his daughter, and I am the property owner. She lunged forward suddenly and grabbed the deed. I caught the edge before she could tear it. That is a copy, I said. County records will survive your tantrum. Let go. I released the paper. She ripped it in half. Valerie gasped. I looked at the pieces on the floor. Feel better? Jasmine's chest was heaving. You stole our legacy. No. I preserved it when your choices helped put it at risk. Liam's phone began vibrating. He checked the screen and rejected the call. Then another arrived. He rejected that too. Investors, I asked. Shut up. I stepped toward the security panel and restored the foyer lights. The chandelier illuminated everyone at once. Jasmine looked younger suddenly. Not innocent, just unprepared. I released the security mode. The exterior locks clicked. At that exact moment, the front doors opened. Cold rain-scented air pushed into the foyer. Desmond stood on the threshold a week earlier than anyone expected, wearing a dark overcoat and carrying a leather briefcase. Jasmine's entire face transformed. Daddy. She dropped the torn deed pieces and ran toward him. He stepped inside. I let them read the restructuring summary before I explained it. That was intentional. If I narrated first, Jasmine would accuse me of spinning a story. The paperwork told the story without emotion. Desmond's company had entered a liquidity crisis. A lender had rights against the estate. My firm acquired the distressed note. A rescue agreement exchanged capital and debt concessions for ownership and security rights. Independent counsel represented Desmond. Another firm represented my investment entity. The deed transferred to the holding company and was recorded. Nothing about the transaction resembled a secret gift between spouses. Jasmine turned pages with trembling fingers. She found Desmond's signature. Then the attorney acknowledgement. Then the date. It was months before our wedding. Her eyes lifted. You owned the house before you married, Dad. The holding company acquired it before we married. Why did you not tell me? Because the transaction was confidential, and because my right to basic respect should not depend on whether my name appears on a deed. Valerie whispered something about family legacy. I looked at her. A legacy that almost went into forced sale is still a liability if nobody manages it. She went quiet. Liam tried another angle. If Desmond has occupancy rights, Jasmine can exercise them for him under power of attorney. No. The agreement does not delegate them that way. And even if it did, occupancy rights do not become ownership rights. He hated precise language. It left him nowhere to hide. Jasmine tore the copy because anger needed an object. I let her. The original was not in the house. The recorded version was not vulnerable to her hands. After she ripped it, she stared at the pieces as though expecting the walls to recognize her authority. Nothing changed. The chandelier remained above us. The property remained titled exactly as before. I restored the lights because the point had been made. Then Desmond arrived. His timing felt cinematic, but it was not magic. His flight had landed early, and the estate system notified me when his vehicle passed the outer gate. I knew he was seconds away. I simply did not tell them. Sometimes the cleanest reveal is letting the right person walk through the door at the right time. Jasmine asked a practical question after the shock settled. If your company owns the house, why does Dad call it his home? Because home and title are not the same word, I said. The rescue agreement was designed to preserve continuity while the business recovered. Desmond kept occupancy rights and responsibilities. My holding company carried title and the secured risk. It was not romantic. It was a restructuring. She glanced around the foyer. So the property taxes, paid through the holding structure. Insurance same. Major capital work approved through the owner entity. The answers came too quickly for her to dismiss them as improvisation. For years she had assumed paperwork was background noise beneath wealth. Now every wall around her existed because of paperwork she had never read. That realization made the estate feel unfamiliar to her before Desmond even stepped through the door. The most difficult part for Jasmine was realizing the rescue had happened before our marriage. That date removed her favorite accusation. She could not claim I married Desmond, gained access, and then engineered ownership of the estate. The sequence ran the other way. Professional work came first, the property restructuring came next, the marriage came later. She had spent 2 years calling me opportunistic while living inside an asset my capital had helped preserve. But he did not open his arms. Jasmine stopped 2 feet from her father, confused by the absence of an embrace. Daddy, thank God. Chloe has completely lost her mind. Desmond closed the front door behind him. He looked tired from travel but not surprised. His gaze moved slowly through the foyer. Torn deed pages on the floor. Valerie by the stairs. Liam standing with his phone clenched in one hand. Jasmine barefoot and furious. Me beside the console. Jasmine rushed into her story. She stole my clothes. She locked us out of rooms. She shut off the air and internet. She sabotaged Liam's investor meeting. Now she is forging deeds and claiming she owns your house. I told you she was using you. Desmond did not interrupt. The lack of reaction made Jasmine talk faster. She donated thousands of dollars of my silk dresses. She served foreclosure documents at breakfast. She is obsessed with humiliating us. Liam stepped forward. Desmond. I tried to keep this civil. Chloe is unstable. She has been racially hostile toward me, aggressive toward Jasmine, and vindictive about my company. She manufactured a diligence report to destroy my funding meeting. I think you need to get her away from the family before this becomes a public scandal. He spoke in the calm, measured tone he used when trying to make prejudice sound professional. Desmond looked at him. Racially hostile. Liam swallowed. Yes, she clearly resents me. For being white. The directness of Desmond's question made him hesitate. I am saying there has been hostility. Desmond's face hardened. I had spent years hearing Liam hide contempt inside jokes. Comments about my hair, comments about neighborhoods, comments about people from your background. The second he faced consequences, he tried to reverse the accusation and weaponize the very issue he had used to needle me. I said nothing. Desmond turned to me. Did we get it all? The question shattered the entire room. Jasmine stopped breathing. I nodded. Property records. Credit lines opened with Jasmine's identity. The source code ownership trail. Trust distributions routed into Liam's entities. The offshore receiving accounts. We preserved the documents and transaction history. Liam's mouth opened. What are you talking about? Desmond set his briefcase on the foyer table. Jasmine looked from him to me. Dad. He removed his coat slowly. The London merger was not the real reason I left. Her face went blank. I told everyone it was a merger because I needed Liam to believe I was distracted. Liam took a step backward. Desmond continued. For months, Chloe's forensic team has been reviewing losses connected to your trust in my company. Some of the counterparties and account structures were outside the United States. I traveled to London to meet Institutions Council and people controlling records we needed preserved. Jasmine shook her head. You investigated us. I investigated missing money. Liam laughed nervously. This is insane. Desmond ignored him. 2 years ago, Jasmine, you signed trust-linked shares and guarantees into the crypto investment Liam brought you. You did it after I told you not to. When the position failed, it did more than hurt your trust. It triggered guarantees that reached into my development company. You told me you fixed that. I did not. He looked at me. Chloe did. Jasmine followed his gaze. I felt no triumph in that moment. The truth was finally entering a room that had rejected it for years. Desmond's voice remained quiet. Her firm mapped every obligation negotiated with lenders, bought distressed debt, and injected enough capital to keep the company from collapsing. She did not marry me because she needed access to my wealth. I married a woman whose judgment had already helped save mine. Valerie gripped the stair rail. Liam stared at the floor. Jasmine whispered, No. Desmond opened his briefcase. Yes. He pulled out a thick black ledger and placed it on the table. And while I was in London, we finished tracing where the rest of the money went. He looked directly at Liam. Desmond's silence during Jasmine's accusations was not indifference. I knew that look. He was separating statements into categories. What happened? What was interpretation? What was manipulation? He had learned some of that discipline from watching me work. When Liam called me racially hostile, Desmond's jaw tightened because he had heard the opposite for years. He had heard Liam ask whether my natural hair was appropriate for investor dinners. He had heard him joke that my neighborhood background made me street smart. He had heard the careful little phrases designed to remind me that Liam believed whiteness and wealth made him the default authority in every room. I never asked Desmond to fight those battles for me, but he remembered them. So when Liam suddenly presented himself as the victim of racial hostility, the accusation did not confuse Desmond. It disgusted him. Jasmine did not notice. She was too desperate for her father to choose sides. That was the old family pattern. If Desmond embraced her, Chloe lost. If Desmond defended me, Jasmine believed she lost. Nobody had taught her that love was not a ranking system. Desmond refused the competition. He asked a factual question instead. Did we get it all? That was why the room changed. The question revealed partnership, not romance, work, planning, shared evidence. It told Jasmine that her father had not been helpless in London while I ran wild at home. He had been participating. Liam asked whether Desmond had been spying on him. Desmond answered carefully. I reviewed activity affecting my company and my daughter's trust after serious losses. I used lawyers, accountants, counterparties, and lawful records. If your transactions stayed outside those assets, they were not part of our review. Liam could not argue with that, without admitting the overlap. Jasmine asked why Desmond trusted me. His answer was simple. Because when the numbers were collapsing, Chloe told me the truth before she told me what I wanted to hear. That sentence hurt her more than the deed. She had spent years believing loyalty meant agreement. Desmond had learned that loyalty sometimes looks like the person willing to say no. Jasmine kept trying to interrupt Desmond's explanation with the same question. Why did you not tell me? Finally, he answered more fully. Because every financial boundary became proof in your mind that I loved you less. When I told you no on the crypto deal, you stopped speaking to me for 2 weeks. When Chloe questioned the guarantees, you called her jealous. I chose secrecy because I was afraid of another explosion. That was my mistake. Jasmine stared at him. So you lied. I hid the investigation, he said. I should have confronted the family problem earlier. But I will not apologize for protecting the company or your trust. The admission mattered. Desmond was not presenting himself as the flawless patriarch returning to save the room. He admitted avoidance. That removed one of Jasmine's favorite defenses, blaming every consequence on somebody else's perfection. Desmond also corrected one detail immediately. He had not returned early because Jasmine called crying. His return had been scheduled the moment the London institutions confirmed the final records. Jasmine's drama did not summon him. The investigation did. That distinction stripped away the last illusion that she could still control his decisions by escalating louder than everyone else. That is what we came home to discuss. Desmond opened the black ledger. The first page was not dramatic. It was a table. Dates, account names, transfer amounts, receiving entities, reference numbers. That made it more frightening. People can argue with accusations. They cannot argue with a bank confirmation. Jasmine moved closer to the table. What is that, your trust activity? I said. She looked at me sharply. The trust I manage as primary trustee. The words hit her almost as hard as the deed. You control my trust. I administer it under the restructuring agreement your father approved after the crypto losses. There are independent oversight provisions. I cannot take your money for myself. I can stop distributions when there is evidence the trust is being misused. Desmond turned a page. We found misuse. Liam folded his arms. You have no idea what standard business transfers look like. I started reading. $180,000 from a trust-backed line into a consulting company controlled by Liam. 48 hours later, $150,000 moved into his startup payroll account. The balance covered a personal card. Jasmine looked at him. Liam's jaw tightened. Temporary bridge. Next transfer, I said. 92,000 routed through another entity. 88,000 returned to cover a startup creditor. The remaining 4,000 paid expenses, unrelated to Jasmine. Accounting timing, Liam said. Third transfer. His voice got louder. Enough, I continued. A credit facility opened using the last 4 digits of Jasmine's social security number as guarantor. Proceeds moved to an offshore-controlled entity. The application carried an electronic authorization we could not reconcile with Jasmine's device history. Jasmine's eyes widened. I did not sign that, I know. Liam stepped forward. She probably forgot. I turned another page. That explanation might work once. It does not explain a pattern. Desmond opened a separate section. 2 years ago, when Chloe rescued the company, we believed the damage stopped with the crypto deal. It did not. Liam kept using your trust as a private emergency fund. Jasmine's voice cracked. Dad, why did you not tell me Chloe was trustee? Because every time I tried to discuss limits, you accused me of choosing her over you. I needed the assets protected by someone who would not respond to emotional pressure. That answer hurt her, but it was true. Valerie stepped away from the stairs. Desmond, surely this can be handled quietly. It is being handled carefully, he said. I explained what had happened that afternoon. The trust-linked offshore accounts, receiving questionable transfers, had been restricted from further trust distributions. Where I had authority as trustee, I suspended movement immediately. Council sent preservation notices to relevant institutions. Some banks placed their own holds after reviewing the documentation. We did not seize Liam's unrelated private property. We stopped trust money from continuing to disappear. Liam's face twisted. You froze my accounts. We froze trust-linked channels, I corrected. Same thing. Only if you were treating the trust as yours. Jasmine looked at him. Were you? He did not answer. Desmond closed the ledger. The London trip gave us confirmations we could not get remotely. Beneficial ownership. Transfer instructions. Identity records. Enough to distinguish legitimate trust activity from money moving into Liam's private network. Jasmine pressed one hand against the table. How much? I hesitated. She looked at me. How much did he take? The answer was not a single clean number because some transfers were still under review. I gave her the verified amount, then the larger exposure still being traced. Her knees almost buckled. Desmond reached toward her. She stepped away. No. She looked at Liam. Tell me this is wrong. Liam stared at the ledger. Jasmine's voice rose. Tell me. He finally looked at her. The London work had taken months to prepare. Desmond explained that no single trip could magically uncover a global fraud. Before he left, my team had already identified the trust-backed facilities, the domestic transfer points, and several receiving entities. What London provided was confirmation from institutions and advisors connected to beneficial ownership and account instructions. The final pieces turned suspicion into a defensible record. That distinction mattered because I refused to become the villain Liam needed me to be. I was not freezing random accounts because he insulted me. I was exercising trustee controls where the trust documents allowed action after documented misuse. Council handled notices. Banks made their own decisions about restrictions beyond our authority. Desmond handled his corporate interests. Each person stayed inside the power actually granted to them. Jasmine listened while I explained the structure. For once, she did not interrupt. The verified misuse number made her sit down. She asked where the money went. I showed her categories: startup payroll, past due vendors, personal credit cards, the penthouse, travel. One transfer into a foreign entity whose purpose was still under review. Not all of it was money Liam had put in his pocket. Some of it kept his failing business alive. That did not make it harmless. Using someone else's identity and trust access to subsidize a company without informed consent is not romantic sacrifice. It is exploitation. Jasmine asked how long I knew. I told her the truth. I suspected irregularities months earlier. I knew the pattern only after records accumulated. I did not know every destination until London confirmations arrived. She looked at me. Why did you not warn me? Because every previous warning became an accusation that I was jealous of your marriage. And because incomplete accusations would have given Liam time to move assets. She flinched. That answer forced her to remember how she had treated every boundary as hostility. Desmond closed one ledger section and opened another. The money was only half the problem. The other half was trust, and Liam was about to destroy what remained of it himself. I also showed Jasmine the control memo that authorized the temporary trust restrictions. It listed the exact clauses permitting action when identity misuse, unauthorized guarantees, or dissipation risk appeared. She read the section headings. So you cannot just keep it frozen forever because you are angry with me. Correct. The answer surprised her. There will be review, I said. Counsel. Documentation. Notice. If the risk is resolved, the controls change. My job as trustee is not to punish you. It is to protect the trust, including from decisions you might regret. She looked at Liam. He had told her trustees were glorified accountants. Now she understood a trustee could also be the only person in the room legally obligated to say no. That difference between personal anger and fiduciary duty became important later when she had to decide whether I was her enemy or simply the first adult who refused to finance denial. I handed Jasmine a copy of the trust's annual statement. For the first time, she read the trustee section instead of skipping to the distribution total. My name had been there for 2 years. She had signed receipt acknowledgments without reading them. That embarrassed her, but it also taught a necessary lesson: important truths are often hidden only by our refusal to look. And the loving husband disappeared from his face. Liam's transformation was almost physical. For days he had performed confidence, irritation, superiority. Even when Kingston rejected him, he clung to the image of a misunderstood founder. Even when the deed proved he did not control the house, he acted as though another threat would restore the hierarchy. Now the money trail was open. There was nothing left to perform for. Jasmine stood across from him, waiting for a denial. He laughed, not warmly. You really want me to explain every dollar to you? Yes. Why? So you can pretend you were some innocent victim while spending the money. Her face changed. I thought it was ours. There is no ours, Liam said. The cruelty arrived so cleanly that even Valerie inhaled sharply. Jasmine whispered his name. He pointed toward the ledger. Do you know what it costs to keep your life running? The penthouse, the car, the club, the trips, the clothes. Every month you wanted something new because you thought being Desmond's daughter meant the world owed you a velvet rope. You told me your company paid for it. I told you what you needed to hear. Jasmine recoiled. Desmond's hands curled at his sides. I stepped closer to the table. The startup payroll transfers were not paying for Jasmine's lifestyle, Liam. He snapped his head toward me. Stay out of this. No. You already destroyed my company. Your company was in default before I served you breakfast. He looked back at Jasmine. Fine. You want truth? Your trust was the only liquid asset I could reach without begging investors who ask too many questions. Your father was never going to give me enough. You were useful. Jasmine's eyes filled. Useful. You were supposed to be an advantage. Instead, you became another person I had to manage. She looked as though the floor had disappeared. I loved you. Liam's mouth twisted. You loved the version of me that made you feel sophisticated. And you loved me for money. I loved what came with you. There it was. No report, no audit, no spreadsheet. Just the sentence. Jasmine stared at him for several seconds, then covered her mouth. Desmond took a step toward Liam. Get out. Liam laughed again, gladly. He grabbed his coat from the bench. Jasmine moved automatically after him. Where are you going? Anywhere that is not this house. What about the penthouse foreclosure? The company asked Chloe. She seems to know everything. What about me? He stopped at the door. His face was completely empty. There is no money, Jasmine. What exactly would I be staying for? The front door opened. Cold rain air moved through the foyer. Jasmine made a sound I had never heard from her before. Liam walked out. His car started less than a minute later. Tires sprayed water across the driveway as he accelerated toward the gate. Jasmine stood at the glass watching the taillights disappear. Desmond moved beside her but did not touch her. He had spent years protecting her from consequences. This one could not be softened. I closed the front door. Valerie exhaled. That man is a parasite. Jasmine turned on her with red eyes. You defended him. Valerie stiffened. I defended the family. You told me Chloe was the danger. Valerie looked toward me as though searching for somewhere to place blame. Before she could speak, her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Jasmine had called her earlier from the car, and again after the deed reveal. During the chaos, Valerie had stepped away to retrieve documents from her own house because she intended to help prove I had no authority. Now she had returned at the worst possible moment for herself. She picked up the large handbag sitting near the stairs. I came here to witness the eviction, she said. Not this. I walked toward my office. Then you should stay for one more financial lesson. She frowned. I returned carrying a slim file. Jasmine tried one final time to rescue the version of Liam she had married. Maybe he panicked, she said. Maybe the company was failing and he thought he could put the money back. Liam laughed. That sound ended the possibility. It was contempt, not shame. He told her she had never understood how business worked. He told her people like him took risks. He told her she should be grateful he had tried to turn inherited money into something productive. Then he said the sentence no spreadsheet could soften. You were useful. Desmond looked ready to throw him through the door. I kept my voice even, because Jasmine was still listening. Useful for what Liam looked at me. Do you need another confession for your file? No. I need Jasmine to hear you without the version she invented. He turned back to his wife. Your father was never going to hand me control. You had access. You had guarantees. You had a trust. I used what was available. Jasmine asked whether he would have stayed if the trust had not been frozen. He did not answer immediately. That pause was an answer. Then he said no. The cruelty was total because he no longer needed her. He grabbed his coat. Jasmine followed him to the door despite everything. Trauma does not erase attachment in one clean moment. She asked him to stay long enough to talk privately. He refused. She asked whether any part of their marriage had been real. He said it was real when it worked. Then he left. I watched Jasmine remain at the glass until his card disappeared. That image stayed with me. Entitlement had made her cruel, but betrayal made her human again, in a way humiliation never could. When she turned back, the anger was gone. There was only shock. That was the state Valerie walked into. And Valerie, being Valerie, mistook silence for a chance to reclaim control. Before leaving, Liam made one final attempt to bargain. He offered to sign over a portion of his startup if we reopened the trust-backed lines. Desmond told him no. He offered personal stock options. I told him the startup was already in secured default, and the ownership of its core technology was disputed. He looked at Jasmine. Tell them what she asked, that this is our marriage. She stared at him. Our marriage was not supposed to require my social security number on loans I never signed. Liam's face hardened again. That was the exact second her loyalty shifted, not toward me, toward herself. She stopped trying to protect him from the consequences and started asking what he had actually done. He could not survive that version of Jasmine, so he left. Liam left one more thing behind, his expensive watch on the foyer table. Jasmine noticed it after the door closed. For a second she reached for it, then stopped. It had been purchased through one of the disputed cards. She left it where it was and asked me to add it to the property inventory. That tiny decision was the first sign that shock was turning into accountability. Her name was on the cover. Valerie stared at the file as though recognizing it might create an obligation. What is that, your boutique loan? Her face hardened. That is between Desmond and me. It was. Desmond shook his head slightly. Valerie, you asked me for help. I asked Chloe's firm to structure the bridge because the banks would not extend more credit. Jasmine looked at her aunt. You borrowed money from Chloe. Valerie lifted her chin. I borrowed against my business. Successful people use leverage. Successful businesses repay it, I said. She turned on me. Do not lecture me. I placed the file on the table and opened it. The bridge facility was not some mysterious favor. It was a documented demand note secured by business assets and limited personal guarantees. My firm later acquired the note as part of a distressed credit package. Valerie had missed financial reporting covenants twice and narrowly cured a payment default the previous quarter. I had not enforced the demand provision because I preferred recovery over humiliation. That patience was not weakness. Valerie looked at Desmond. Tell her to stop. Desmond's voice was tired. No. The answer stunned her. Desmond, I am your sister, and Chloe is my wife. More importantly, she is the lender whose contract you signed. Valerie's nostrils flared. This is exactly what I warned you about. She has embedded herself into every part of the family's finances. She owns your house. She controls Jasmine's trust. She holds my debt. You call that love, I call it documentation, I said. She pointed at me. You do not belong in this family. The words hung in the foyer. I closed the file slowly. Valerie, your loan contains a demand feature triggered by specific uncured defaults and misrepresentations. I have not called it because your business still has a path to stabilize. If you raise your voice at me in my house again, I will instruct counsel tomorrow morning to enforce every right the agreement gives us. Her expression changed. It was not fear exactly, it was calculation. For the first time she understood that insulting me carried a price she could not transfer to Desmond. Jasmine wiped her face with the back of her hand. Aunt Valerie, just stop. Valerie looked at her. I came here to help you. You came here to watch Chloe get thrown out. Valerie had no answer. Desmond leaned against the foyer table. The old Atlanta money you keep talking about is not a shield, he said. Most of it is leverage, property obligations, and reputation. Chloe understands that better than any of us. Valerie looked down at the loan file, then at me, then at Desmond. She picked up her purse. Fine. She walked toward the door. Before opening it, she stopped. Are you really going to call the note tomorrow? That depends on whether the defaults are cured and whether you follow the agreement. Not on whether I like you. She gave me a long look. That answer seemed to frighten her more than a threat. She left. The door closed. The house became silent. Jasmine stood in the center of the marble foyer with Liam gone, Valerie gone, and every financial story she had believed dismantled. Her breathing changed. Short. Fast. Desmond said her name. She pressed one hand to her chest. I cannot breathe. I moved toward her. She stepped back once, then her knees gave way. She collapsed onto the floor. Desmond rushed forward. Jasmine was hyperventilating, tears pouring down her face. I knelt beside her. Look at me. She tried. Slow breath in. Her shoulders shook. Again. I guided her breathing until the panic began to loosen. Then the crying came. Not polished tears. Not performance. She bent forward and sobbed like someone mourning an entire identity. I looked at the woman who had handed me a maid list a month before she would understand what it meant to earn anything. And I realized the next part of the story would not be punishment. It would be harder. Valerie's loan file contained none of the drama she brought into the house. That was why it worked. Principal balance, interest rate, collateral, covenants. Missed reporting dates, 1 cured payment default, 1 waiver, no insults, no opinions, just obligations. She flipped through the pages and accused me of holding private family conversations against her. I reminded her she had signed documents with my firm. Desmond reminded her he had told her who the lender was. She claimed she had not realized I controlled the investment entity. I asked whether that would have changed her promise to repay. She had no answer. Jasmine watched the exchange from the floor. For the first time, she saw Valerie's old Atlanta money as what it really was. A business under pressure. Debt. Image. A woman terrified of losing status. Valerie had spent years teaching Jasmine that wealth made them superior. Now Jasmine watched her aunt become quiet because a contract existed. It was an important lesson. I did not call the loan. Threatening to ruin Valerie for an insult would have turned me into the kind of person I despised. I told her enforcement depended on the agreement, not my feelings. If she cured defaults, delivered reporting, and met payment terms, the loan continued. If she did not, remedies followed. Her volume was irrelevant. That was the actual boundary. When she left, Desmond asked whether I meant it. Every word. He nodded. Good. Jasmine began hyperventilating seconds later. The timing made sense. Liam was gone. Valerie's mythology was gone. The financial hierarchy was gone. There was nobody left to protect Jasmine from looking at herself. That was when she broke. After Valerie left, Desmond picked up her loan file and looked at me. You really would enforce it if the contractual triggers occur and are not cured, yes. Even after tonight, especially after tonight. Anger should not change underwriting. Jasmine heard that. Later she told me it was the first thing that made her believe I had not frozen her trust out of revenge. I had leverage over Valerie and refused to use it merely because she insulted me. I had leverage over Jasmine and had used it only when financial misuse appeared. That consistency did more to rebuild trust than any speech about loving the family. People who grow up around arbitrary power learn to fear power. Predictable rules feel almost radical. Valerie's silence after reading the note changed the atmosphere more than another shouting match could have. She had spent decades teaching Jasmine that wealth meant never having to answer to anyone. Yet one properly drafted loan agreement reduced all that performance to a payment schedule. Jasmine watched the lesson land and for once did not defend the mythology. It would be change. Jasmine cried until she had no energy left to hide behind anger. Desmond sat on the bottom stair a few feet away. He looked devastated, but he did not interrupt. He had protected his daughter from consequences for most of her life. This was the first time he seemed to understand that rescuing her too early would simply rebuild the same wall. I stayed on the floor beside her. At first I did not touch her. She had spent days invading my space, grabbing my arm, ordering me around, treating me like a servant. Compassion did not require pretending that never happened. When her breathing slowed, she looked at me. Are you going to kick me out? The question was barely audible. I could have answered immediately. Instead, I asked, is that what you think I should do? Her face crumpled. I tried to kick you out. Yes. I called you a charity case. Yes. I made you carry our bags. Yes. She covered her face again. I am sorry. The words sounded different now. Not because she said them beautifully, because there was nothing left for her to gain by saying them. I shifted closer. What Liam did to you is not your fault. She looked up. What you did to me is. She flinched, then nodded. Pain does not erase responsibility. I continued. I can understand why you were afraid of being replaced without accepting the way you tried to degrade me. Her mouth trembled. I thought Dad chose you over me. Desmond started to speak. I held up one hand gently. Let her finish. Jasmine looked at him. Every time I saw you listen to Chloe, I felt like I was losing. She had a career. She had your respect. She did not need the foster name to matter. I thought if I could prove she wanted your money, you would see her differently. Desmond's face tightened. Jasmine, I never asked you to compete with my wife. I know. She looked back at me. And the worse I treated you, the calmer you got. That made me hate you more, because you could not control me. Yes, the honesty was ugly. It was also the first useful thing she had given me. I opened my arms. Come here. She stared. Then she leaned into me. I held her. Her body shook against my silk wrap. I did not tell her everything would be fine. Liam's fraud would take months to unwind. Her credit would need repair. The trust review would remain active. Some legitimate debts would survive even if fraudulent accounts were challenged. I let her mourn. After several minutes, I pulled back and used a tissue to wipe the mascara from beneath her eyes. Then I reached into the pocket of my robe. The crumpled Maid list was still there. I had carried it since the night she arrived. I unfolded it and placed it between us. Breakfast at 8. Fresh sheets every week. Scrub the bathroom every night. Hand wash clothes. No maids. No help. Jasmine stared at her own handwriting. I was horrible. You were entitled. That sounds nicer. It is more accurate. She almost smiled. I tapped the paper. This list tells me something important, that I am a monster. No, that you have no idea how much work you expected someone else to do, just because you thought her time belonged to you. Her eyes dropped. You do not understand money for the same reason. Other people absorb the labor. Your father, the trust, staff, me. Liam used that blindness. She swallowed. So what happens now? I folded the list again. Now you learn what things cost. Desmond looked at me. Jasmine looked terrified. I stood and offered her my hand. She took it. For the first time since she arrived at the estate, she let me help her up without acting as though accepting help made someone weak. We moved into the sitting room. I poured water. Jasmine held the glass with both hands. I am not kicking you out, I said. Her eyes filled again. But do not confuse mercy with returning to the old arrangement. She nodded quickly. The trust remains restricted during the fraud review. No discretionary allowance, no luxury credit, no new guarantees. Accounts Liam opened without authorization will be challenged. Legitimate obligations that remain will be addressed honestly. What am I supposed to live on? A paycheck. She blinked. Holding Jasmine was not forgiveness. I need that distinction to be clear. Forgiveness is a personal process. A boundary is a decision. Compassion is an action you can choose even while a boundary remains. I chose compassion because she was finally vulnerable without trying to use vulnerability as a weapon. Desmond watched closely. He knew I had every reason to leave her on the marble. Later he told me that moment changed his understanding of strength. Not the deed. Not the trust. Not the forensic files. The hug. Jasmine asked why I had not exposed my role in the company years earlier. Because I wanted you to decide whether I deserved respect before you knew what I could take away. Her face tightened. I failed. Yes. The honesty surprised her. I was not going to make growth easy by pretending otherwise. She asked whether I hated her. No. That answer made her cry again. Why not? Because hate would keep you in my life even if I removed you from the house. I prefer clarity. She looked down at the maid list. I told her the paper was not evidence for court. It was evidence for us. A record of the person she had chosen to be when she believed there were no consequences. I asked her to read it aloud. She made it through breakfast sheets, bathroom clothes, then stopped. No maids, no help. Why did you write that? I asked. Because I wanted you to do it. Why? She swallowed. Because I thought if you were tired enough, embarrassed enough, you would leave. That was the most important confession of the night. The chores had never been about household standards. They were an eviction campaign disguised as entitlement. Once she admitted that the list became useful, not as revenge, as a mirror. Jasmine asked me one question before we left the foyer. Are you going to tell everyone at the club? Numb. Why not? Because your humiliation is not an asset I need to monetize. She stared at me. That answer seemed to confuse her more than anger would have. She had grown up in a family where status injuries were repaid publicly. Valerie used gossip. Liam used investor rooms. Jasmine used social circles. I had the perfect story to destroy her reputation. I chose not to use it. Consequences would remain private wherever possible. The trust review, legal claims, and employment changes were enough. Sweet revenge did not require an audience. It required the abuse to stop. When I finally stood, my knees hurt from the marble. Jasmine noticed and reached to help me. The gesture was awkward, almost automatic, but I accepted it. 24 hours earlier, she would have expected me to stand and carry her bags. Now she was offering a hand. Change sometimes announces itself in gestures too small for anyone else to notice. Mine, yes, yours. Jasmine stared at me, as though I had suggested she move to another planet. I have never had a job. I know. I have a degree. Good. You can use it. Desmond hid the beginning of a smile behind his hand. I continued before he could make the moment easier for her. If you want to stay in this house while your finances are repaired, you will work an entry-level administrative position at my firm. You will start with document control, reconciliation, scheduling, and basic ledger review. You will have a supervisor who is not me. You will earn the same starting salary as anyone else in that role. Jasmine's mouth fell open. You own part of Dad's empire, and you want me filing documents. I want you learning how money moves before you inherit more of it. What about the debts? Council will separate fraudulently opened accounts from obligations you actually authorized. We will challenge what should be challenged. You will help pay legitimate debts and the legal costs created by cleaning up Liam's mess, because adulthood is not the same as being punished. She looked at Desmond. He nodded. Chloe is right. You always say that now. He sighed. Maybe because she is often right about numbers I preferred not to see. Jasmine looked down at the maid list. What about here? I pointed to each item. You clean up after yourself. You wash your own clothes. You learn the names of every employee who works on this property. You speak to them with respect. You do not issue orders because you are Desmond's daughter. You do not enter my office without permission. You do not alter security systems. You do not invite Liam here. Her face tightened at his name. He will probably come back when he realizes he has nowhere to go. Then security will turn him away. What if I want to see him? That is your choice. Not in my house and not with trust money. She nodded slowly. Desmond leaned forward. There is another condition from me. Jasmine looked at him. Therapy. She exhaled. Dad. Not negotiable. Her eyes filled with resistance. You spent years believing love meant access to money and protection from consequences. I helped create that. I am going to help repair it, but I am not going to pretend one bad husband caused everything. Jasmine went quiet. That was the first time Desmond admitted his part. I respected him for it. She looked at me again. What happens tomorrow? Work starts Monday. I tapped the maid list. But tomorrow is Saturday. She waited. Breakfast is at 8. Her brow furrowed. You are cooking. For a moment the room was silent. Then she let out a wet, exhausted laugh. I cannot cook. I know. What if I burn everything? Then we open a window. Desmond laughed. Jasmine rolled her eyes, but the gesture had lost its poison. At 7 the next morning I heard cabinets opening. At 7:15 I smelled coffee. At 7:30 I heard something fall and Jasmine whisper a curse. I stayed upstairs. This was not about whether she could cook eggs. It was about whether she could encounter a task without handing it to someone she considered beneath her. At 7:59 I walked into the kitchen. She stood at the stove wearing leggings and one of Desmond's old shirts. Smoke drifted from a skillet. The toast was too dark. One egg had broken. Jasmine looked at me with genuine panic. I tried. I looked at the plate. That is obvious. Is it terrible? Yes. Her face fell. I picked up the fork. But it is yours. I took a bite. She waited. Needs salt. She laughed so hard she had to lean against the counter. Desmond entered. What did I miss? Your daughter made breakfast. He looked at the smoking pan. Should I call the fire department? Jasmine threw a dish towel at him. The three of us laughed. It was not forgiveness. The employment conditions shocked Jasmine because work had always been something other people did around her. She knew careers in the abstract. She knew titles. She knew salaries. She knew how to praise Liam for building a company. But she had never been accountable to a supervisor who could return her work and say, "This is wrong. Do it again." That was exactly why I chose entry-level administration. Not punishment. Foundation. I told her she would not report to me because I did not want our family conflict contaminating her performance reviews. Her supervisor would apply normal standards. Attendance. Accuracy. Confidentiality. Deadlines. No exceptions because Desmond was her father. She looked almost relieved by that. What if people know who I am? Some will. Then they will think I am pathetic. Only if you act pathetic. She rolled her eyes. There she is, Desmond said. Jasmine actually smiled. We also discussed the trust. I explained that frozen did not mean I had stolen her inheritance. It meant discretionary distributions were suspended while misuse was reviewed and protective controls were strengthened. Necessary expenses could be handled under trustee rules. Fraudulent liabilities would be challenged. Legitimate ones would not disappear. She listened carefully. "Why did nobody ever explain this to me?" Desmond answered before I could. "Because I liked being the hero who said yes." The admission landed softly. Jasmine looked at him. He continued. "Every time you asked, I gave. Every time you made a mistake, I covered it. Then I blamed you for not learning." She reached across the table and took his hand. That was the first repair in the room that did not involve money. The breakfast rule made her laugh, but I meant it. Not because I needed a cook. Because she needed one task where the result depended entirely on preparation, attention, and effort. Eggs do not care who your father is. Toast does not respect a trust fund. The stove is wonderfully democratic. We wrote the new house rules down together. Not a humiliating list shoved into someone's chest. A simple agreement. Privacy. Respect. Contribution. No unauthorized guests. No interference with security systems. No use of Desmond's name to command staff. Jasmine suggested one line herself. "If I am angry, I do not make financial decisions until I have cooled down." I raised an eyebrow. "Useful." She smiled faintly. "I learned something this week." Desmond signed the page as witness. Then I folded the original Maid list and placed it beside the new agreement. The contrast mattered. One list was about domination. The other was about boundaries. Both used paper. Only one treated everyone in the house like an adult. I also required Jasmine to review her own credit reports with counsel. She had never read one. We marked every account she recognized, every account she did not, and every inquiry tied to Liam's financing. The process frightened her, but fear was healthier than ignorance. By the end, she understood that financial independence begins with knowing what exists in your own name. It was a beginning. 1 month later, the house sounded different. No shouting, no slammed doors, no Liam barking into speakerphone about investors. At 7:55 on a Wednesday morning, I walked into the kitchen and found Jasmine at the stove. Her hair was pulled back into a simple bun. She wore navy slacks, flat shoes, and a soft gray sweater. No designer logo was visible. Her old luxury car was gone, sold as part of the financial cleanup to cover legitimate obligations and the legal costs created by untangling Liam's fraud. She used the commuter train most days because parking downtown was expensive, and she had decided she would rather keep the difference in savings. That decision impressed me more than any outfit ever had. She turned 2 eggs. "Do not hover," she said. "I am standing 6 feet away." "It feels like hovering." The toast popped up. Not burned. She placed a plate in front of me. Eggs, toast, fruit. Coffee waited beside it. I sat. She sat across from me with her own mug. For several seconds we ate in silence. Then she pulled a folded printout from her work bag. "I have a question." "You always have a question before 8. It is important." She unfolded the page. At my firm, she had started exactly where I promised. Administrative support, document indexing, reconciliation review, scheduling. She had made enough mistakes in the first week to cover an entire training manual, but she had stopped making the same mistake twice. That mattered. She pointed at a spreadsheet. "This cash transfer leaves one subsidiary on Friday and shows up in the other on Monday. The amounts match. The month-end report says everything reconciles. Do I still flag the timing?" "What do you think?" Her brows knitted. "I think I flag it and request the bank confirmation before I assume the weekend explains it." "Why? Because matching totals do not prove the path was clean." I smiled. "Exactly." She leaned back. "I hate how satisfying it is when I find something. That is called competence. I thought competence felt more glamorous." "No. Usually it feels like noticing a date nobody else noticed." She laughed. The first week at the office had nearly broken her. Her supervisor had returned a transaction index covered in comments. Jasmine came into my office, red-faced and furious. She said I missed 17 fields. "Did you?" "Yes." "Then fix 17 fields." She had stared at me, waiting for sympathy. I gave her none. She went back to her desk. 2 hours later, the file came back clean. The next day, she asked how to distinguish a duplicate invoice from legitimate recurring billing. The week after that, she asked why a vendor address mattered. I showed her a case where 6 supposedly independent vendors shared the same mailbox. Her entire understanding of money began changing. She stopped seeing wealth as the visible thing. The car, the dress, the house. She started seeing structure, ownership, debt, cash flow, controls, risk. At home, the changes were smaller but just as important. She thanked the housekeeper by name. She carried her own laundry upstairs. She replaced a towel after using it instead of dropping it on the floor. One Saturday, she asked the gardener why winter pruning mattered and actually listened to the answer. I noticed because these were the exact people she once treated as invisible. Desmond noticed too. He did not praise her every time. That restraint was part of his growth. One night, Jasmine came home late from work and found me reviewing files in the sitting room. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Depends." "Why did you hug me?" I looked up. That night, when Liam left, she sat across from me. I would not have hugged me. I considered the question. Because you were finally hurting in a way that could teach you something, and I did not want cruelty to be the lesson. Her eyes lowered. I thought revenge would have made you kick me out. It might have felt good for 10 minutes. And this, I looked at her work bag. This is harder. For both of us. She nodded. Then she smiled slightly. "Breakfast tomorrow?" 8. "I am making pancakes. Now you are getting reckless." She laughed. The next morning the pancakes were uneven. Her first paycheck changed her more than the amount suggested it should. It was not large by the standards she grew up with. After taxes, transit lunch, and the automatic savings transfer, I made her set up for herself. The number remaining in her account looked almost insulting to her. She stared at the deposit on her phone. "People live on this, millions do. How budgets?" She groaned. I helped her build one. Rent was 0 while she stayed at the estate, but I made her include a hypothetical housing line so she understood what independence would cost. Transportation, food, insurance, savings, debt, legal cleanup, discretionary spending. The first version was impossible because she allocated nearly half the paycheck to clothing and beauty. I slid the spreadsheet back. "Try again." She did. By the third version, she had created a real emergency fund contribution. That was growth no Instagram post could display. At work, she learned a more difficult version of the same lesson. Every spreadsheet was a budget of attention. Miss one field and somebody else paid the price in time. Misread one date and an investigation could chase the wrong theory. Assume one narrative and evidence could be distorted. She began checking twice, then 3 times. Her supervisor told me quietly that Jasmine was not naturally patient, but had become stubborn about accuracy. I considered that a compliment. She also began asking about the people behind the records. Who approved this invoice? Why did this employee not report the duplicate? What pressure was the finance team under? For the first time, she was seeing systems instead of servants. At home, the change showed up in tiny acts. She put gas in Desmond's car after borrowing it. She replaced groceries she finished. She stopped leaving glasses on the staircase. She asked before entering rooms. Nobody applauded. That was important. Basic respect should not require a standing ovation. By the 4th week, Jasmine's supervisor stopped mentioning that she was Desmond's daughter in update emails to me. The reports became ordinary, arrived on time, completed indexing batch, corrected reconciliation notes, asked appropriate questions. That was success, not a dramatic promotion, not a viral transformation, normal competence. Jasmine seemed proud of that normality. One evening she showed me her savings account. It was not large. But the number had grown only because she had earned it and chosen not to spend it. Nobody could freeze that satisfaction. Nobody could expose it as a lie. I understood then why the breakfast scene felt so important. The eggs were not the achievement. Ownership of effort was. At the office, she stopped introducing herself with Desmond's last name attached to every sentence. Her badge already carried it. She no longer needed to use it as a weapon. When a new employee asked what she did, Jasmine answered, "Administrative analyst in training." No mention of trust funds. No mention of country clubs. I heard about it later and smiled, but none of them burned. Desmond came downstairs as Jasmine was packing her lunch. He kissed my cheek, accepted the coffee she handed him, and looked toward the driveway. "Your ride here," Train Jasmine said. "I can have the driver take you." "No." The answer came quickly. Desmond looked surprised. Jasmine adjusted the strap of her modest work bag. "The train costs less. I already loaded the monthly pass." He looked at me. I did not react. This decision belonged to her. She grabbed a banana from the counter. "I have a 9 o'clock file review. If I miss the early train, my supervisor is going to make that face." "What face?" Desmond asked. "The face people make when they expect me to act like your daughter." Desmond laughed. Jasmine paused at the door. Then she looked at me. "Tonight I want to go over the account dispute from Liam's offshore lines. Council sent a new packet. After dinner." She nodded. "Bye." The door closed. We watched through the window as she walked down the long drive toward the pickup point. A month earlier, she had entered that same house dragging 3 oversized suitcases and a maid list. Now she carried one work bag and her own lunch. Desmond stood beside me in silence. "I did not think this was possible," he said. "What her?" I looked at him. She was always possible. The environment just rewarded the worst version of her. He exhaled slowly. I rewarded it. Yes. The honesty no longer wounded him the way it used to. He nodded. "I thought giving her everything was love. Giving someone everything they want is easier than teaching them how to survive disappointment." He smiled faintly. "You always have a line ready." "It is an occupational hazard." We carried our coffee onto the patio. Winter sunlight rested across the Buckhead estate. The same property Jasmine once believed proved I was dependent on her father now felt different to me too. It was not a trophy. It was an asset saved during crisis, maintained by contracts, labor, and people who deserved respect. The financial cleanup was still ongoing. Liam faced civil claims over trust misuse and the source code dispute. His startup's secured creditors were dismantling what remained. The trust accounts were still under review. Council was challenging unauthorized credit facilities opened in Jasmine's name and negotiating the legitimate balances that survived. Nothing had vanished because of one dramatic speech. That mattered. Real consequences are slower than television. They arrive as letters, deadlines, meetings, canceled privileges, monthly payments, and choices that can no longer be postponed. Valerie had not raised her voice at me again. Her boutique submitted the financial reports required by the loan agreement. She cut expenses, sold excess inventory, and began paying down the bridge note. We were not friends. We did not need to be. Respect had replaced performance. Desmond's company had stabilized. The London operation produced the records we needed to close several asset recovery questions. The estate remained in my holding company under the rescue structure exactly as before. Desmond continued to live there with me because our marriage was a partnership, not because either of us needed to pretend ownership proved love. And Jasmine was learning. That was the sweetest part. Not watching Liam drive away. Not silencing Valerie. Not placing the deed on the marble table. Watching a woman who once equated inherited wealth with human value discover the quiet satisfaction of earning a paycheck she could explain. Desmond looked toward the gate. "Do you think she will stay changed?" "People do not stay changed because one lesson humiliates them," I said. "They stay changed because they practice different choices." He took a sip of coffee. "That sounds expensive. Cheaper than another crypto scam." He laughed. I looked across the lawn. The night Jasmine ordered me to be her maid, she thought respect could be assigned downward. She believed money determined who served and who commanded. She did not know the woman in the silk bonnet had already helped rescue the empire she thought she would inherit. She did not know I held the deed beneath her feet, or the trusty authority protecting the money Liam was draining. I could have revealed everything at 9 that night. I did not. Power is not proving what you can do the moment someone insults you. Sometimes power is letting people walk confidently toward the truth they refuse to see. I took another sip of coffee. At exactly 8 the next morning, after Jasmine moved in, I had served foreclosure papers instead of avocado toast. 1 month later, she served me eggs she cooked herself before taking a commuter train to an entry-level job. That was not defeat. That was growth. Desmond slipped an arm around my waist. Peaceful, he said. Finally. I looked at the house, the winter garden, and the empty driveway where Liam's car used to sit. Respect had not been won through screaming matches. It had not been purchased with family money. It had been enforced through boundaries, documents, consequences, and the refusal to become cruel simply because cruelty would have been easy. Sweet justice, I thought, was not making Jasmine cry. It was giving her the chance to become someone who would never again hand another woman a maid list and call entitlement tradition. I finished my coffee. Inside, the kitchen clock turned 8. The legal and financial aftermath remained deliberately unglamorous. Liam's startup did not vanish overnight. It entered restructuring, then creditor enforcement when financing failed. The source code dispute moved through council. The trust pursued recovery where evidence supported it. Jasmine's identity theft claims were reviewed by lenders. Some debts were removed, some were not. That slower process helped her more than a theatrical punishment would have. Every month she saw how one bad decision could echo through statements and legal bills. She learned that wealth is not immunity from paperwork. Valerie changed too, though less dramatically. Her boutique cut its expensive showroom lease and moved into a smaller space. She submitted reports on time. She stopped saying "old Atlanta money" every time she needed to win an argument. Once at a family lunch, she thanked a server by name. I noticed. I did not comment. Desmond became less of a rescuer. That may have been the hardest transformation in the house. When Jasmine asked him for money to replace a handbag Liam had sold, Desmond looked at me. I shook my head. He looked back at her. No. Jasmine sighed. Then she saved for a new one. 3 weeks later, she decided she did not want it anymore. That was the moment Desmond finally understood what boundaries can teach. People often imagine revenge as taking something away. Sometimes the sweeter outcome is removing the cushion that prevents someone from becoming capable. I had enough power to destroy Jasmine financially. I did not use it. I used enough leverage to stop the abuse, protect the assets, and force reality into the room. The rest had to be her choice. I kept the original maid list in a file in my office, not as a trophy, as a reminder. Power can tempt the injured person to become the new tyrant. I did not want that. The deed gave me property rights. The trust gave me fiduciary authority. The loan documents gave me contractual remedies. None of those things gave me permission to humiliate people for pleasure. The minute I forgot that distinction, I would become another person using wealth to decide whose dignity mattered. So I kept the list folded beside my professional ethics manual. One page showed what entitlement